So hello everyone, my name is Vinil Mistry and today we'll be looking at the netting configuration. Previously we have seen the static netting configuration, so we'll be looking at the dynamic netting configuration, that how we can configure the dynamic netting. We'll look at the step-by-step configuration of router, and then we'll look at the IP net table that we have studied in the theory portion. So the first step, which mainly includes the general configuration of the router. So before starting the configuration, let us just see that how the outcome will be looking like. So let's see the outcome first, then we'll start the implementation. So the outcome will be looking like this. So assume that this server 0 with IP address 54.0.0.2 is the outside of the network, and the left side of part of this router 0 is the inside of the network. So these all are you can see 10 network and 11 network, and these all IP 10.0.0. Something and 11.0.0. something will be private addresses, and the public addresses only we have 54.0.0.1. So these all addresses 10 network or 11 network will be getting translated into 54.0.0.1. So let us just view the first packet. If we send the packet from laptop 2, which is having IP, or you can say which is residing in the 10 network, and we will be pinging up with the server, which is outside the network. So the packet is generated. Let us just observe the packet. So outbound. So you can see the source IP is a private net address. You can see 10.0.0.6. And the destination IP is public IP 54.0.0.2. So now let us capture the packet. So from the router 0, let us observe the packet that in inbound we see the IP source IP is 10.0.0.6. The destination IP is public address as we have seen 54.2. Now if you observe in the outbound, so you can see the 10.6, which is an inbound source IP, which was the private IP address. It is getting translated into public IP address, which is 54.0.0.1, and the destination IP remains same. So packet is reached, and if we now observe the net table, so for observing that, we need to first go in the enable mode, then show IP net translation for viewing the net translation table. So as you can see, the ports, this is the combined netting and petting. So you can see that this pro is for protocol, that ICMP protocol is getting translated. So we have ping with the server, so which includes the ICMP protocol, and these all are the inside global address and map with the inside local address. So you can see that we can observe the table over here. You can see for in outside global we get the unique every entry is unique. So that is one thing that we must need to observe over here. So we'll be configuring this step by step. So let's start from the first step. So let us start from the implementation for the general configuration. So we'll delete all this stuff. So now first of all we will take the router, which will be main separation between the inside and outside the network. So we'll in advance we'll off the router first, and we will attach the Ethernet plug in advance, because we'll going to need, and we'll turn on the router. Then after we'll take end devices, like say for server for the outside of the network, which is included in the right side of the router, and then we'll take one switch over here for the LAN, and we'll take PC, or you can say laptop. These all are the end devices in the local area network, and these all devices will be having private address. So let us just connect the all devices. First of all, we'll configuring the LAN, and now this is connected with the router. That will be main separation part. And now let us just connect the server with the outside network, which will be this server. So let us just first note down the important parts. So if we hover over here, so this port is FA 0/0, and let us say we're going to take this IP as 10.0.0.1. So we can have the clear idea while we will be in configuration mode, and let us just observe the port over here, which is FA 0/1. Let's say the IP will give assign is 54.0.0.1. So we'll get the clear idea about this, that how this is outside the network and this is the inside the network. So this is the inside net, and this is the outside net. So let us just now configure the devices. So the gateway will be the address over here. So let's say 10.2, this device will quickly out from the simulation mode now, and let's say the default gateway over here is also 10.1, and the IP that we assign is 10.3. So the default gateway will be 10.1 and the IP is 4. And now we assign for the server, let's say the default gateway is 54.1 and the IP address of the server is 2. We'll be pinging over here. So now let us look at the general configuration of the router. So first of all, we'll go into configuration terminal mode. So now we'll assign the IP address for FA this interface fast Ethernet 0/0. So for that we'll type fast Ethernet interface fast Ethernet 0/0, and we'll assign the IP address by IP address command IP address. Then the IP address of this is 10.1 and the subnet mask and no shutdown command. And lastly, this portion is inside the net, so we'll also tell that IP, then net, and then inside. So it will tell the router that this port is connected with the inside network. And now we'll switch back to the configuration. Mode, and now we'll configure this port fast Ethernet 0/1. So for that we'll use interface fast Ethernet 0/1 command, and we'll assign the IP with IP address 50 command. The IP address is 54.0.0.1 and the subnet mask is 255/8 typically, and we'll give no shutdown command. And lastly, we'll need to tell the router that this port is connected with the outside of the network. So for that, IP net outside. That's it. So we'll exit from that. So this is the end of the general configuration of the router. So now we'll see that how to configure the access list. So the access list will mainly include the list of the inside source IP addresses that are private to the network. So basically it will tell that this many IP addresses you need to convert. So this many IP addresses will be private address. So let us just see that how to configure the access list. So now we'll configure the access list that will tell the router that these many IP addresses are the uh, private to the network. So for that we'll go into configuration mode, then we'll type access list, and then if you don't know the command or you forgot the command, then you can type question mark that IP access list will be using the standard IP access list, and for that you need to select the number between, you can see over here, 1 to 99. So let's type 1, and for the next what we need to do, we need to permit or deny some IP addresses. So for that, if you don't know the command, then let's type the question mark. So you can see you can possibly deny, permit or remark. So we'll going to permit. So what we need to permit, we need to permit the IP addresses, or you can say network. So if you don't know the command that what we need to type, then you can now also specify the question mark. So if you type the question mark, then you probably see that address to match any or the host. We can specify the host or single host IP. We can specify the network, or we can specify that any source host address, like any IP address that we need to include. So we don't need to type any. We are going to type our LAN network, which is 10 network. So we'll type 10.0.0. And now we need to specify the wildcard. So if you don't know that what we need to include next, then you can again specify the question mark. That is the basic thing, and this will show the that whether you need to specify a wildcard or you can directly enter. So we'll specify the wildcard, which is a subnet mask, but in the reverse bit. Like fourth bit will come first, third bit, then second bit, and the first bit. So that's it. That we have included the private IP addresses, and simply we need to type enter. For viewing the change, we can go into this user privilege mode. Then we can type show running control. So if we go over here, we can observe the fast Ethernet 0/0, which it is considered in the inside, and fast Ethernet 0/1 it is considered in the outside. And then we can also observe the access list that we have just made, which is permitting the 10 network with the wildcard of this. So now the configuration of the access list is over. Now we'll configure the pool. What is the pool? So the pool is which mainly includes the global, or you can say the public IP addresses for the outside net. That it simply tells that that we have made the previously the access list for the private IP addresses. It will map with the, later on we will map this with the pool, that from these local IP addresses, these private IP addresses, we need to map the global pool, that public IP addresses. So we'll configure the pool in the Cisco Packet Tracer now. So now we'll configure the pool, net pool. So for that, what we are going to do, we will go into configuration mode. And now after going into configuration mode, we'll create a pool. So for that, we need to type a command, that IP, then we'll put a question mark, so it will show the possible options. So you can see NAT, net configuration command. So we'll type NAT, and now we'll again type the question mark. So you can see pool, define pool of addresses. So we will do that. We'll type pool, and then we again press the question mark. It will say word, pool name. So we need to give a pool name. So let's say net 54, because this private IP addresses will going to map into 54, which is public IP address. So we'll say net pool 54, and then if we again press the question mark, then it will show the start IP address. So we need to include the start IP address. So in some scenario, we'll have the, you can say starting IP addresses and ending IP addresses. Uh, there are many, you can say, one-to-many mapping of the uh, one-to-many mapping of the public IP addresses. So in that case, we can give a start IP address and end IP addresses. Since we have the only one IP addresses, so we can mention like this that start IP address 54.1, and if we now press the question mark, it will ask for end IP addresses. So we'll again type the 54.0.0.1. So it will force the router to give the 54 as a public IP address. And now if we press a question mark, it will ask for net mask. So net mask will be /8, which means 255.0.0.0. So that's it. This is the command for making the pool. So now if we need to observe this, so we can go into user execution mode, and if we can just type show running configuration. So you can see we have successfully created the IP net pool with this net. So this is how we can configure the pool. So now we will see that how we can map the access list with the pool. Basically, we need to map the public IP address. We need to map private IP address with the public IP address. So in this command, in this last action, in this last step, will enable the dynamic routing. So now this is the last step. We need to just map the public IP address that will be translated from the private IP address. So for that, we need to go for configure terminal mode, and in here we need to type ipnet, and you can see the possible command that we need to type. We need to address translate for the inside. So we'll type ipnet inside, and then if we see the options, that it will reflect source. So source IP address, and we see the option that we can map the static that we have seen. For now, we'll as we are configuring the dynamic netting, so we'll provide the list that we have just made. So we'll type list. So we can give the word or we can give the number. So we have included the access list with the one number. The name is not given, so we'll give the number 1 over here. And if we see that we need to map the pool, name of the pool of global IP addresses. So we can type pool, and you can see it is asking for the word name of the pool of the global addresses. So we have made the global IP address pool with the NAT 54 name. So we can type that word over here, NAT 54, and this is the very important command. We need to include overload and IP address translation. If we don't include the overload, it will just translate the one IP address at a time. But if you type the overload, then it will translate all the requests which are going from the 10 network to the public. So this is the command ipnet inside source list 1 pool net 54 overload. At any point of time, if you forget the command, if you just remember the ipnet inside source or something keyword, then you can at each step you can give the question mark, and it will prompt back you the options available. So that's the main. So let's give the enter, and now successfully we have configured the dynamic netting. For seeing the effect, we can go into user execution mode, and we can type show running config, and if we see, you can see ipnet inside source is 1 pool net 54 overload. So now if we ping 10 network to 54, so the first request is going to fail. So you can see successful. Now if you see in the simulation mode, so first of all, let us observe the initial packet. Inbound is source IP address is 10.2 and destination IP is 54.2. This is public, this is private. In outbound, it is also same, but from the router, if you observe now, so the inbound, the source IP is private and the destination IP is public 54.2, and you can see the translation happens over here. Like you can see inbound source IP is 10.2 and outbound source IP is 54.2. 54.2 is the public IP address that we have just mapped. So this is basically how we can configure dynamic netting. And if we now observe the table, so for the translation table we can if we want to see, then we can type show IP net translations. So you can see that this table is very much important. You can always find unique ID in outside global. So you can see this is the padding also happening, like port address translation. So that's it. We have learned the dynamic netting configuration. Thank you.